it's time for a model, and once again, unfortunately, it's a figure. So I do apologise. We should have an aircraft shortly. And yes, happy Beltane or Walpurgis night, however you'd like to pronounce it. I bet you I don't get this out until May Day itself. I'd rather have got it out right on the edge of midnight, on the last day of April. But anyway, technology is not my friend at the moment. So there's a model. It's one of my favourites. It's the Mummy, and it's one of the old glow-in-the-dark ones from Aurora. So hooray for them. I've done a little bit of pre-painting, and I'm not going to do the glow-in-the-dark because that box you saw has other parts, spares from another model of the same type, which has got, well, it's got the Mummy written on the box anyway. So I've done a dark undercoat painted, and then I've sprayed a pale brown over the top, because despite it being painted grey and everybody thinking they're kind of bandages on mummies, well, yes they are, but then they're soaked in resin and they go sticky and hard, so they'd be a little bit glossy and a little bit more dark brown. So I know it looks a bit grey, but it's actually a pale brown. So that's what I'm aiming for. Anyway, here's the guy made up somewhat, and he has massive gaps. Okay, I've focused on his waist there, which isn't glued together. You can make fun of that if you wish. But yes, so far very gappy. Look at the, what can we call it? Look at his flies, if you must. Big spaces there, and his head doesn't go together well. Other than that though, the detail's fantastic. And the texture is incredible, which leads me on to the base, which is probably the best base I've ever come across. Definitely the best base of all these Aurora glow-in-the-dark jobbies. And it's remarkably well done. So I'm very pleased with all the bits and pieces. There's a lot of scope for dry brushing on this model, and I do enjoy doing that. But there's also a good amount of scope for doing some very sloppy washes, shall we say. So that's what we're going to get a lot of on this, and I'm really going to take the time on those parts. I'm not going to worry too much about the seams down the middle, because all of this architecture will be made out of relatively manageable blocks and then cut into the shapes necessary, so they will have seams running through them anyway. And this block at the front left has a flat underside where it's lying on the steps, because it's sheared off down its natural construction line. So that's all part of the kind of realism in many respects, and so when these kind of things get ruined, all of these fault lines show up. Anyway, gradually I'm adding colour bit by bit, bit of dry brushing here and there on this one. Again, the base, the texture, the sand around these parts is fantastic. It's really very well done. So that was the base. Now our man is moving on swiftly. You can see he's a bit patchy where I've only sprayed in one direction, in effect, on the parts on the sprue, but he will come together, don't you worry. The base itself is coming together, and I'm going to dwell on that a little bit longer, because it's shaping up quite, shaping is perhaps isn't the word, it's colouring up quite nicely. I've got those two basic colours, the dark and the pale brown, and now I'm overlaying more sandy colours. And the main paint I'm using is actually household paint. I got a tester pot, and just by coincidence, I'm sure, it was called Egyptian sand, so that's going okay. But I want to get other colours in, as well, slightly, well, not colours, other shades in on all this too. The other thing, if these things have been falling about and ruins collapsing, and there's all that sand building up over them. They've been lying around for a while, haven't they? So in the sheared off sections that are damaged, you're going to get build-up of dust. So I'm not going to go too wild on the broken edges. I'm not going to lighten them up too much. Instead, we'll say, yes, dust is gathering. So that's the aim on the base. Make it look a little bit older and drier, in effect. Anyway, here's our man again. Put on the weird ripped bandages. They were glow-in-the-dark pieces, and you can see that they were just put on for effect on the whole. But the one that comes off his right shoulder and goes over his right arm, the very long one, that one works. That one's really nice. It's integrated well into the model. The others are a bit kind of applique, a little bit afterthought. So I've cut off some of the join areas because the holes are massive, and the joins and the kind of blocks that go into the holes were massive too, and it made them sit out a long way. So I've just lain them on and glued them, and then with a bit of dry brushing bring them all together colour wise, and they're going as best they can if you kind of think about it. So now he's done, and here he is on his base. Had to adjust his left foot because it wasn't quite sitting on the semicircular slab thing, but you know, that was a bit of a vague photograph, wasn't it? Looked better in on the computer. Anyway, there he is, with his snake as well, the cobra. Got that in right at the end, nearly forgot it, and with all these ripped bits, which they're still not. They still look like an afterthought, don't they? But apart from the afterthought and the big gaps, which I've done my best to fill and shape and give a bit of texture to, apart from those, this is actually a fantastic model. As I say, the sculpting, the design and the surface texture is phenomenal, and I thoroughly enjoyed painting it, and I had to stop myself from going on and on and on. It was a real joy to do. So if you haven't got this model, or you've never done it, see if you can get your hands on it at a reasonable price and enjoy it. It also, it kind of lends itself to being manipulated slightly, doesn't it? You could do an awful lot with this model. Anyway, so there he is. Interestingly, I wasn't going to do him for Beltane Walpurgis night. I was going to do a henge out of bits and pieces, a kind of cobbled together diorama with some small 28mm figures, but I can't find the figures. I don't want to do it without. So we got him instead. I've been looking forward to doing him for ages anyway. So I've enjoyed it very much. I have to say, have you seen the film, the 1930s film? There isn't much mummy in it. As a kid I found this a bit of an anticlimax. Now I'm older, I can see it's a really clever story, but they could have had a bit more man in bandages wandering around. He certainly didn't look like this at all in the film. But there we go, that was horror in the 1930s. More about romance than scaring you to death. So yeah, that's that. But anyway, good model, thoroughly enjoyed it, and yeah, see if you can get a hold of it, because it's a good fun build. And then just a little bit more of the base, just because, and that it is all really sculpted very nicely, even down to the cobra, which again could have been a nasty afterthought and a bit embarrassing, but he sits there quite nicely and he brings the model forward somewhat. So it's good. Definitely enjoyed it. Well, yeah, okay, so if I can find the figures for this this henge, I will carry on making it. They're somewhere. I mean, the obvious thing is I've put them somewhere safe. That's quite clearly what's happened. and it's been a disaster from there. But you know, we'll move on with that one, and I'll try and get something a bit supernatural based for each equinox and solstice. So what are we on at the moment? We must be on a wrong way around, an equinox. Our nights and days are equal, which was a very important time for ancient folks, when doors opened between the worlds and we could all slip hither and thither. So naturally a guy like this is going to get out and walk around, isn't he? So good for him, is what I say. Well done, mate. Enjoy yourself. So anyway, I'm rambling now because I'm just enjoying kind of looking back at this fella, because he was so much fun. I don't think I've got any more glow in the dark aurora figures at the moment, and we will go back to an aircraft, I think, in the next film, if I can remember what I've got lined up, and then probably branch out, go back to a few tanks, I think. Anyway, and here he is, moodily lit. I was enjoying lighting him. He all the texture picks up the light fantastically. It's not black and white, it's just the way I've lit it. I don't know how, it didn't look like that at the time, but it's come out black and white. Anyway, thank you for watching, folks. It's good to do a model, and we'll have a lot more and a lot of variety coming up shortly.